In this video, I will be discussing the basic moral argument for God. And this is part of a series where I have been going through types of evidence that are valuable to me and that strengthen my faith, so that with God's help and by God's grace, I believe that Christianity is true, and I have enough confidence in that to keep following Jesus, again, with his help, even when it is hard, even when it is costly, even when it is dangerous. So in part one, I gave an overview of 7 categories of evidence that help me to believe that there is a God, and specifically that Christianity is true. In part 2, I discussed supernatural experiences, and these included some supernatural things that I have experienced, like little miracles that I think are best explained if Christianity is true. And I also discussed a type of miracle that is happening all around the world that is very well documented. In part 2, I discussed multiple reliable eyewitnesses for the resurrection of Christ. Of course, if Jesus really did rise from the dead, that pretty much settles it, that Christianity is true. So that was in part 3. And now in part 4a, I am going to begin to discuss the moral argument and how our sense of morality points to, in this video, I'm going to discuss how it points to the existence of God. And Lord willing, in part 4b, I will discuss how our sense of morality specifically aligns well with Christianity as opposed to other theistic options. So, trying to put the moral argument into my own words, I came up with this sentence: people all around the world and all throughout history have a sense of morality, of right and wrong, good and evil, that is best explained by the existence of God. Now, this argument for God has been presented by many people, and in preparing to make this video, I reviewed some other presentations to help me do a good job. And I give links to some of these that I thought were especially helpful in the description for this video. So if you want more detail, or if you want to hear a different perspective of the same argument, you can go to those links, and I hope that will help you. For me, William Lane Craig's 4-part YouTube videos on this topic was probably the best presentation I found. Honestly, probably better than this presentation. But these 4 parts add up to something close to 2 hours of discussion. So I'm hoping that giving a much shorter, maybe around 20 minutes, I'm not sure how long it will be, version here will be helpful to some people. And also I want to give it as part of this complete testimony of these different types of reasons that help me to believe. So here's William Lane Craig's version of this argument. He presents it as a syllogy. It's a type of deductive reasoning, if you're interested in the different types of reasoning and what it's called. So he says, point 1, if God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. That's the first premise. Premise number 2, objective moral values and duties do exist. And the conclusion, which follows logically if the 2 premises are correct, is therefore God exists. And this is such a clear way of thinking about this issue that I'm going to follow William Lane Craig's method here, his type of argument. I do want to mention that this can be reworded in a way that's follows more abductive reasoning as opposed to deductive. That's abductive AB, or a Bayesian type of thinking for those of you who are into that type of philosophy and logic. So this would be how it could be reworded. People generally have a strong sense of moral values and duties that apply to people, to all people, whether those people agree with them or not. And point two, this is more expected if there is a God than if there is no God. So we could look at it using this type of abductive reasoning. Um, but William Lane Craig's way of saying it is so precise and insightful that I'm going to stick with this, even though throughout most of these series, I tend to think more abductively. And if you're not sure what abductive versus deductive is, don't worry about it. It's not going to really make a difference in the strength of this argument. So here's his argument again. And I'm going to begin by discussing the second premise, and then I'll discuss I'm going to begin by discussing why I believe the second premise is true. Then I'll discuss why I believe the first premise is true. And then if those two things are true, it just follows very simply that the conclusion is correct. So moral values. What do we mean by moral values? Values relate to judgments about whether something is good or bad, valuable or worthless. Most people would agree, for example, that in general, human well-being and human happiness have value. We just feel that in our souls, in our being, that people have value. So that would be an example of a moral value. In fact, most people can see that all people have value, even if due to health problems or other problems, they are not able to contribute much in material ways to society. So most people see that an elderly person who is no longer capable of working in the workforce still has intrinsic value. Or these days, I'm so thankful that people with many handicaps and physical challenges can contribute a lot in our modern society. But imagine if you were living 1,000 years ago in a place and time where a person who was crippled really couldn't contribute to the types of work that was being done. Thankfully, almost everyone would look at that person and if asked, does this person's well-being matter? Does this person's happiness matter? Something within us that's hardwired in us, I believe, would say yes, even this person's well-being and happiness matters. In fact, it matters equally well to the person who's being very productive. At least I believe that, and I would guess that most of you who are listening to this would agree to that. Now that's moral values. Let's talk about moral duties quickly. A duty is something that someone should do or not do, and it's a little bit different from a moral value. For example, let's say that the Red Cross is having a blood drive. Most people would say that's a good thing to do, to donate blood if you're able to, because it helps other people to have well-being and to have happiness and to flourish. So it's a good thing to do. It agrees with a value that we have, but it's not necessarily a duty. Let's say that for a particular person, they have something very important to do at work and they can't responsibly get out of work at the time of the blood drive. We would not say that they should go to the blood drive, even though it has value. So a duty is something someone should or should not do, but a value tells us what types of things have value and what type of things do not. Now, what do we mean when we say that there are objective moral values in duties? This word objective can mean a little bit different things in different contexts. Here, in this context, objective means that these values and duties exist and are true regardless of the opinions, feelings, or actions of any individual or group. The easiest way to demonstrate this, that this is true, the easiest way to demonstrate that there are objective moral values and duties is to give some examples. But before I do that, let me draw an analogy between physical vision and moral awareness, or we could metaphorically say moral vision, that will help us to think about this more clearly. A lot of this is stuff that I got from William Lane Craig's 4 videos, which are fantastic. So here we go. Physical vision gives people objectively true information about the physical world, even if many people have flawed vision. For instance, I need to wear these reading glasses or bifocals with reading lenses in order to read a lot of material, like in a book. And some people have much more flawed. Some people are colorblind, and some people are totally blind, or they have very limited vision. But none of that changes the fact that vision in general gives people objectively true information about the physical world. Even if everyone was colorblind, it would still be true, objectively true, that in general, grass is green, the sky is blue. On a certain day, either the sky is clear and sunny, or it's cloudy, and we can see the types of clouds and say those are more likely to rain, or other clouds are not. And this is objectively true information that doesn't depend on everyone having good vision or on anyone having perfect vision. It's still objectively true. In the same way, our conscience, or we could say our moral and value judgments, or we could say our moral vision, gives us true objective information about values and duties, even though many people have a skewed or damaged conscience. So for various reasons, our conscience gives us a strong feeling of right and wrong and of justice. And if someone claims that they don't believe in right and wrong, just cut in front of them in the line in Walmart, and you'll find out they do. They don't live consistently with a claim to not believe in right and wrong. And even if it's not them you're cutting in front of, if they see someone cut in front of people in another line, chances are they will immediately feel like that person is wrong, because this is so deeply wired into us. But I'm not claiming that our conscience is perfect. It's like vision. Many people, I don't think any of us have an absolutely perfect moral conscience where we always judge with precision in every complex situation what is the best thing to do and what is right and what is wrong. But that doesn't change the fact that, and some people have really skewed morals, but that doesn't change the fact that most people have a pretty good basic idea and have a lot of agreement about what's moral and what's not, and make very similar value judgments, and it's independent. These things are true even if some people get them wrong. That's my point. Now, here's a couple of examples. And these examples, everyone thinks are the same examples, and it's because they're such good examples. The Holocaust. Every morally healthy person agrees that it was terrible for the Nazis to exterminate the Jews and other groups of people that they considered to be less valuable and less helpful to their society. And this is true even though some of the Nazis themselves thought they were doing the right thing, or convinced themselves. They probably had some amount of moral feeling that they were ignoring or suppressing, but somehow they convinced themselves and might have said that, oh, we think that this is the right thing to do. It doesn't matter that they had the wrong opinion. We know that it's objectively wrong. And if you don't agree with that, most people listening to this would probably say that there was something really severely wrong with your sense of morality. It would be like a person who is either totally blind or very nearly totally blind. Same thing with child abuse. We all know that it's wrong to abuse children in any way. Same thing with non-consensual sex forced by power or threat. If a boss threatens to fire a woman who works for him unless she has sex with him, we all know that's wrong. We know it in our hearts. Even if a pedophile has some twisted thoughts in his mind that somehow he is justified abusing children, or even if the boss defends himself, we say, no, it doesn't matter what he thinks, it doesn't matter what he wants, that is wrong. It's always wrong. And there are many, many other examples you could come up with yourself. I really think that most people, after they think about it for a minute or two, agree that objective moral values and duties do exist. And again, William Lane Craig, in his 2-hour presentation, gives a lot more detail and detailed defense of this premise. Now let's look at premise number 1. If God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. Okay, with God, if God does exist, it is very easy to explain where objective moral values and duties come from and why most people perceive them, even if imperfectly. God is himself the ultimate source of morality. He himself is entirely good, and he created us in his image, and he wants us to be good. He doesn't force us to be, but he wants us to be. And both through the conscience that he gave us, and even though it can get damaged in this world and not work perfectly, it does work enough to warn us that we do things that are wrong, and we don't always live up to what we know we should do. Both through our conscience that all people all around the world have, and through special revelation that he has given in the Bible. In both of these ways, God teaches us what is right and what is wrong, and so God is the source of these objective moral values. That's very easy to explain if you believe in God. Without God, it is really hard to explain why there are objective moral values and duties, things that are true no matter what somebody's opinion is. And yet we know that there are these objective moral values and duties. William Lane Craig covers a number of attempts to explain objective morals without God. I'll just briefly mention the most popular one, the one that's most popular today in my society. What about evolution? Some people say, well, evolution can explain morals because it is advantageous to our species for the survival and propagation of our species for us to act morally and not immorally. And let me say, as far as that goes, I agree it's advantageous for the propagation and survival of our species to act morally and not immorally, but that still doesn't explain why there are objective moral values and duties. So here's an example. I think an example will help us to see this. Evolution cannot give any good reason why a powerful dictator shouldn't imprison and torture innocent opponents, or why a pedophile shouldn't abuse children if these people, if the dictator and the pedophile want to do these things and can get away with them. And by the way, some dictators do get away with doing this, and they live long lives and they die getting away with imprisoning and torturing lots of innocent people. And some pedophiles never get caught. And so why shouldn't they do what they want to do? If morals only come from evolution, and they have evolved in such a way that they want lots of power, and they feel threatened by people who oppose them, even if those people are doing good things, why shouldn't the dictator imprison and torture them if he can get away with it, which sometimes he can? Why shouldn't the pedophile act on his sick desires if evolution is the only basis of morality? Evolution seems to run out of answers after 2 or 3 why questions. This is what I mean. Imagine an evolutionist saying this to a dictator. And by the way, I'm not saying that evolutionists, people who believe in evolution, are not good moral people. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is evolution does not provide a foundation for objective moral values and duties, even though these things do exist. So an evolutionist might say to a dictator, you shouldn't imprison and torture that reporter who reported true facts about your corruption. That shouldn't have a question mark. That should be a statement. You should say you shouldn't do that. And the dictator might say, why? Why shouldn't I do that? And the evolutionist might answer, correctly by the way, in the long run, a species imprisoning and torturing its own members is not good for the survival and propagation of the species. And you might say, well, that's a true statement. So the evolutionist has succeeded. No, he hasn't, because the dictator's not gonna say, oh, well, in that case, I'll stop imprisoning and torturing people. He might think, or he might respond this way. But why should I personally care about that? Why should I not act in my own short-term personal interest and do what I want to do instead of worrying about the long-term survival and propagation of the species? The long-term survival and propagation of the species is a value but acting according to that value is not a duty. There's no reason that someone's obligated to act on that value if evolution is the only source of morality. So I think that God is by far the best explanation for objective morals. The evolutionist has no good answer. I'm not saying evolutionists aren't often good moral people, but I'm saying they have no good answer as to why a dictator shouldn't imprison and torture innocent people, for example. But the Christian does. The Christian can say, that's wrong because God teaches us it's wrong, and you should care about it because God is going to judge you. You're going to be resurrected and face judgment. And so, see, if the dictator really believes in evolution, then there's no good reason for him not to continue to be evil. But if the dictator came to really believe the Christian message, he has extremely strong motivation to stop being evil. And there's a good explanation for why there are objective moral values and duties if Christianity is true. I'll point out that it also seems likely that evolution would produce morals that are counter to the highest moral standards, like sacrificial love. We feel that one of the very highest morals is when someone sacrifices themselves, maybe even their life, but certainly makes sacrifices that are costly to themselves for the benefit of helping someone else. But evolution is only concerned with the survival and propagation of the fittest, and evolution could easily lead to killing and stealing from the less fit, even though we know that's wrong. So evolution would not produce the moral values and duties that people all around the world, and I'm not saying that we see this perfectly. We may need glasses to see more exactly, like studying the Bible, but we have a basic sense, and evolution does not line up very well with that at all. So I agree with this argument. If God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. But objective moral values and duties do exist. And this argument is so powerful because we feel this inside ourselves. If people are honest, they feel these objective moral values and duties. It's hardwired in us. That's one of the reasons this is one of the at a popular level, which is really a really important level. This is one of the really strong arguments for the existence of God. Objective moral values and duties do exist, therefore God exists. Now, this argument has only said that some type of a moral God exists. But in part 4B of this series, Lord willing, I will talk about ways in which morality specifically supports Christianity and not just theism in general. I pray that these videos will help you and will be a blessing to everyone who watches them. God bless you, and may God bless this video.